The recent passing of Gordon Lightfoot evoked tributes around the world. Here in Toronto, everyone I know posted some special story or personal anecdote about the man whose music has touched so many and in so many ways. My experience was a little different, one that focused on the man more than on the music. Keep listening to this episode of Before, Behind, and Between to learn more.
Podcast starts now.
In late 1999, I was working as an assistant producer on something called the Family Farm Tribute. It was a concert that featured a couple of dozen groups and musical artists who played in support of family farmers in Canada. I was working with my dear friend Dennis Mills, who was the Member of Parliament at that time, who represented a riding, incidentally, that included the neighborhood that features the intersection of Danforth and Pape Avenues, which is a namesake for one of the pieces from Rush's Hemispheres album. Dennis was the executive producer and lead organizer of the Family Farm Tribute. So there we were hauling ass in the fall of '99, working toward the date of the event, January 16, 2000. The event was slated as an all-Sunday afternoon music extravaganza that featured the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, Fred Penner and Sharon Lois and Bram for the younger kids, Big Sugar, Prairie Oyster, Randy Bachman, Burton Cummings, Sylvia Tyson, Ronnie Hawkins, and Gordon Lightfoot. Well, several hours into the show, I was walking the venue, the floor, the media center, side stage, backstage, you name it. There was a moment when I was off to the side of the stage, resting for a few minutes, leaning against the wall, and taking in a performance by Randy Bachman playing with Big Sugar. I was kind of in my own little world for a few moments, when someone to my right, a few feet away, said to me, "Well, they sound great. I'm guessing people want to hear the hits. What do you think?" I looked to my right, and it was Gordon Lightfoot, who was standing there asking me the question. Well, holy smokes, I thought to myself. Sure, I was part of putting an event together with a lot of musical talent and personalities. I had met and seen a who's who during the weeks leading up to the event, and even more during the day of. But it was Gordon Lightfoot's quiet, unassuming, humble presence that made the most impact on me. I heard his music growing up, at home, over the radio while I was sitting in the back seat of my parents' car. But this was, well, like your next-door neighbor talking about his lawn or the weather. And there he was talking about the set list he was about to play. Well, all I said was something like, "Well, I certainly love your hit songs." Then he said, "Well, I better get ready." He smiled, nodded, and walked away. A short time later, he took the stage, and as part of this set list, he played the Railroad Trilogy and If You Could Read My Mind. I can tell you that his performance was masterful, simply extraordinary. The musicianship was absolutely tight. And his voice, of course, was deeply emotive. When he was done, he bowed, humbly, smiled, and he left the stage. He went up to my friend Dennis and asked him, "Okay, so where do we go next?" He was there in support of family farmers, and his participation was genuine, authentic, there to help, and eager about the next steps. It was absolutely amazing. There's a whole side story to this event which you can read about at Dennis's website, dennismills.com, but on this glimpse into that moment, my personal experience, I can tell you that whenever I hear anything by Gordon Lightfoot, particularly If You Could Read My Mind, I will forever have an image of a friendly, down-to-earth, neighborly man whose authenticity serves as a cherished memory and a lesson about people being people. You've been listening to Before, Behind, and Between, a production of Henley Point. This podcast is available on all major streaming apps and podcast platforms. Visit stephenchristiansen.ca or henleypoint.ca for more information or archived episodes of this program. I'm your host, Stephen Christiansen. Thank you for listening.
A production of Henley Point.